You're listening to Forge Theater Labs.
Where does that idea come from?
A podcast devoted to exploring theater history.
Is anything that original?
Concepts and storytelling.
Isn't that just an assumption?
And the creation of theater from behind the scenes.
How do they even do that?
This is Forge Theater Labs.
History, innovation, perspective.
Hello, everyone. This is Josh from Forge Theater Labs. I am so excited to have you join us tonight for our Design or Bust Life is a Dream episode. Tonight, we're going to invite a team of director and designers to build a theoretical design with an unlimited budget for Life is a Dream. We have asked the director to provide some notes to the designers a little bit ahead of time, but our director this evening has not given much. And so pretty much we have 90 minutes to get this show on the road, built, designed, ready to be pitched, not necessarily built, but that is the name of the game tonight. We may not have a finished product at the end of this episode. I encourage you, as you're listening to this episode, to check out our show notes because you will see the images that we talk about as we go through the episode. Let's go ahead and introduce our team. First, we have director Liz Carlson, she, her. Liz Carlson is a director and dramaturg with a focus on ensemble-based work and new play development. Her recent directing credits include Elephant and Piggy, We Are in a Play, Go Dog Go at Maddie's Theater, The Birds, War of the Worlds at University of Southern Maine, Texas Come Dawn, As You Like It, and The Winter's Tale. She is the artistic director of Maine Playwrights Festival and teaches at the University of Southern Maine. She holds an MFA in directing from Temple University and is an associate member of the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society and literary manager and dramaturgs of America. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to work on this.
Absolutely. Next, I will introduce our scenic designer, and our scenic designer is Sousa Wynn. Sousa Wynn is a designer, builder, and world maker who thrives where storytelling gets weird and spaces get loud. Their work spans immersive environments, theme parks, and interactive installations, from the galaxy-spanning precision of the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge to the chaotic radio static of Meow Wolf's radio. What is that again, Chris?
It's Radio Tave.
Radio Tave. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. With roots in theatrical design and years spent in teaching scenic and immersive design, Chris blends big ideas with our real-world execution. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. With us this evening, we also have lighting designer Elisha Griego, a multifaceted lighting and production designer, producer, and production manager. Elisha's work can be seen in theater, dance, live music, architectural environments, and television. Credits include creative team producer for The Rascals, Once Upon a Dream on Broadway and North America Tour, David Gilmour's Luck and Strange Tour, and all special lighting events at the Empire State Building. Design credits include work with South Coast Repertory, Colorado Shakespeare Festival, Theater Tulsa, Colorado Ballet, Ballet Repertory Theater, Louis Vuitton, and Empire State Reality Trust, among many others. For several years, Elisha also taught lighting design, stagecraft, and production at California State University, Long Beach. Elisha holds a BFA from the University of Colorado, Boulder, and an MFA from University of California, Irvine. Sam has worked as a creative producer for well over a decade. Over the years, he has held the roles of sound designer, recordist, musical arranger, actor, film producer, and as of this season, podcast producer. Through his work as a live event producer, he has filmed the likes of Patrick Dempsey, George Mitchell, Olympia Snow, and many other Mainers of note. Sam has also contributed to sound departments across 4 Damnation Land films. During his 5th, titled Come Home, he moonlit as a cinematographer. As a theatrical designer, he has worked on dozens of projects spanning from radio dramas to live performance. Recent affiliations include Portland Theater Festival, Maddie's Theater, and of course, Forge Theater Labs. Welcome, Sam. I'm so excited tonight to get started on this design. I'm going to hand it over to Liz to sort of lead the discussion tonight. But Liz, before we get started, I would love for you to provide us a little short synopsis of Life is a Dream.
Sure, I would be happy to. Life is a Dream is by Pedro Calderón de la Barca. This is a play from the Spanish Golden Age, written in 1636, and it tells a few intertwining stories. But the primary story, the one you might remember from school, is the story of a king, the King of Poland, King Basilo, who, when his son is born, he receives this very damaging prophecy that his son is going to be a terrible person and a terrible king and is going to destroy the kingdom and kill him. And so he decides his solution to that is, of course, to imprison the baby forever, so that he can never become king and no one will ever know about this child. So he does that. And the story picks up with this now adult, his son, now an adult named Segismundo, imprisoned still. He's only seen one other person in his entire life, his jailer. And so the king, as he becomes an old person and is trying to figure out who's going to inherit his kingdom, has a mild change of heart and is thinking, maybe I was wrong. Maybe after all this time, maybe I was wrong. And maybe my son actually isn't going to be a bad person. Maybe he should be the heir. And the way that we're going to figure that out is we are going to drug him, take him out of this prison, the only home he's known in his whole life. We're going to take him out of this prison. We're going to throw him on the throne and see what happens. And if he's a great guy, if he's a benevolent king, we'll keep him and he'll stay the king. And if he's bad, if he is unjust, if he is exactly who what the prophecy said he would be, we'll drug him again and we'll throw him back in prison and we'll tell him the whole thing was a dream. So they do that. And he arrives on the throne very disoriented, kind of upset and not feeling super benevolent. He doesn't, he has never really interacted with too many people before. He behaves poorly. He throws someone out the window and kills him. And so the king is like, oh, whoops, my bad. Yeah, drag him again, send him back to prison, and that'll be the end. And I'll let my niece and nephew will become the heirs of the kingdom. While this has happened, the people of Poland some of them have figured out there is a rightful heir to the throne available. They break Segismundo out of prison. They start a civil war. The king ends up losing that and is and finds himself at the mercy of his son, who eventually sort of spares him. And the play ends on kind of a strange note of Segismundo throwing the person who freed him from prison in Act 3 back into prison for his treachery in overthrowing the king. So yeah, a little question mark. There's and then there's some other plots. There's the king has a niece and nephew who are both kind of now next in line to the throne and trying to figure that out. And there is this other character of Rosura who comes to Poland seeking vengeance against the king's nephew who has jilted her and left her for his first cousin in order to inherit the throne. And it's sort of her journey that leads Segismundo towards this moment of mercy in Act 3. But there's a lot going on, and a few intersecting plots there. But I think I read this play for the first time about a decade ago while I was in grad school, and it stuck with me in the way that like a lot of other plays haven't, in that I find it to be as like a contemporary thinker and maker of theater and really unsatisfying play in so many ways. Like, I think it doesn't adhere to what my contemporary ideas of justice. It doesn't adhere to my contemporary ideas of like, what is a satisfying character arc? What is a satisfying like conclusion for these characters? It doesn't do any of that for me. And so so it leaves these big spaces of question, and it leaves these big curiosities in it, that a play like that is really exciting for me to explore. I think about like some of the problem plays of Shakespeare as being plays like that, where it's like, oh, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on here, and it causes me a kind of friction as I experience it. It doesn't make me feel good, but it makes me feel curious. And so that, I think, we were talking about what play to do for this. That I was like, that's a play that I'll never actually get to direct, but it's a play that I have curiosity about. So like, maybe we should do this. And then I think the other thing that is so enduring or interesting about this play is this framing of the dream, right? This framing device and this theme that runs throughout of like, how do you know what's real? How, like, what is like the logic that we agree to in a dream world, and like, what is that experience of what we accept in dreams, or like how we decipher real life from dreaming? And I think that invites us into a space of like sensory exploration and an invitation to create the sensory experience of a dream, create the logic of a dream in space with an audience. And this play is so, in so many ways, this play feels like it contains those like illogical shifts within it. And I would love to like find the spaces to lean into that and to really exploit this idea of like, what actually is real? I don't think it's that we just agree that the whole play is real and like, what if the whole play is dream? Like, what if this this podcast is a dream? Like, what are the things that we get to play with that help us with this sense of like disorientation and chaotic logic that exists within the dreamscape. There are really like fun, interesting shifts. I think Chlorine the clown is a hilarious presence in the play. Nothing else about the play is funny. Nothing else about this play is funny, except this one character who comes in is objectively hilarious, even for like a modern reader of the play, and then he's brutally killed in the middle of Act 3, like brutally just murdered, no explanation. And I think that like just this like sudden moment, and I think those kinds of jarring and jolting moments are ones that I really am interested in like finding and figuring out how to embrace them and how to like push on them, because I think those are the spaces of the questions. So that's maybe a little bit more than I prepped you for in my very, what did you call them? My very vague notes. So I'm interested. I'm very interested in what speaks to each of you about the play, or the things that popped for you. Absolutely. Chris, do you want to start us off?
So yeah, I mean, I think one thing that really interested me was, like you said, the idea of what is real, what is reality, what do we, and what does it matter, right? Does it matter if this is a dream? Does it matter if, like everything that around us is illusion, right? How would we live our life if it was, right? How would it change? Would that change? And that, I think, is interesting. It started getting me thinking about kind of like, different types of philosophies, and like, nihilism, and like, existentialism, and like we create our own, in existentialism, you're creating your own meaning for life, right? And in a dream, you're creating the own meaning through the dream. And so there's kind of like this kind of very strong kind of existentialist somewhat, ideas that were coming to me through this play. And then there's also the idea of fate, right? And he's fated to overthrow his father, right? The king. He's been given this kind of like this oracle, and so there's the fate and free will, and the battle of fate and free will that's going on here, and him, so one of the things that I was thinking about is like what is a contemporary oracle, right? What oracles do we have now? If we're looking at this through a modern lens, right? What is our current oracles, right? And I mean, AI was the first thing that kind of came to my mind. Was like AI as a modern oracle, right? As and you hear about like AI psychosis. Have you guys heard about this? Where people like start to like use AI as like just choosing what they wear, what they eat, everything about their lives, and then the AI starts to, in their mind at least, talk back to them and start making them think like they're special and think that they're like the chosen one, the prophecy, they're the and it gets really weird very, very quickly. But AI is only what you feed it, right? You feed it information, it feeds you back, and so these people are looking for their meaning within their lives. And so it's kind of an interesting kind of thought. Yes, Elisha.
Yeah, I mean, just to tag on to that a little bit, I'm actually working with AI in my day job right now, and the feedback loop that it creates for you, right? Like, and that's what a dream is as well, right? It's your own voice speaking to you and feeding you what you want to hear, what you think you need to hear, and the AI is part of that. You train the AI, you teach it what you want it to be, and it is a mirror of you. And I think a dream is the same thing, right? A dream is a mirror.
Right. And so there's this kind of interesting thought of like, as you're looking at it through a contemporary lens, like what is this oracle? What is the dream? What are, the mirror that's coming back to us? And so it's kind of an interesting thought, about that. And then there's other parts that come to mind about, you know, this person is incarcerated for their entire life, right? And you could look at it through the lens of incarceration and reformative justice, and how do and this is in some ways a very strong message for that lens, right? Because, he, and, in the end, at least, has the free will to choose, and he chooses to, relinquish the throne back to his father, right? He chooses a path that is more noble, more honorable, right? He chooses to forego revenge, right? And so does, and I'm totally blanking on her name. Rosara, yeah. They both choose to forego revenge and and come to this place of peace and justice, and and it's kind of an interesting thought as well. And the free will part of it I think is really interesting, the free will and the reality, the choosing, like how do we look at reality, what is reality, how we structure our reality. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that idea about is the what is fate? I mean, this play harkens to so many different things, but right, you think about this is the Oedipus, right? Is the prophecy is in some ways like not non-avoidable, or also are you creating the circumstances in which this becomes necessary, right? And I think as we look at this play as modern people, I read it, I'm like, well, what do you expect from this guy? He has been abused and imprisoned for his entire life. Like, your expectations are so out of pocket. Like, there is no. I think he's going to just show up here and be totally like well adjusted and ready to rock. Like, okay. And so I think those questions of like, what is the abuses of power and like the nature of cruelty and what this expectation. And I think that's where the ending becomes a little dissatisfying to me is it's like, well, that mercy doesn't feel earned or something. Yeah, there's something about it that's like, where is I want restorative justice. My contemporary self wants restorative justice, not this sort of just like Deus ex machina justice.
It definitely does feel kind of like a little bit out of nowhere, right? There's like it just kind of pops in, but I mean, Calderon needed to finish the play, and he wanted to like put his own message of whatever to it, of honesty and honor, and I there was a playwright who I saw him speak at one point, and he's like, most of the time I don't know how to end a play, so I just drive it off a cliff. And it was Mac Wellman, I think it was. Yeah, he's like, I don't know how to end the play, so I just drive it off a cliff. And it's like, well, okay. And this feels somewhat that way. Yeah.
Talking about the feeling of Deus Machina, I want to counter that. I feel like once a certain character recognizes that they don't care about their stakes anymore, they're like, okay, I'm all done playing. This can be your fate. I'm going to go this way. Even with Clarion, okay, we're in a battle now. There's no room for comic relief. I guess I'm all done. I'm going to exit. Yeah, to that extent where the stakes are really just in the mind of which character has the floor. And they all seem to kind of talk it out. And like, once logic is on the table, they're like, you know what? I hear your perspective. I adopt that perspective. And just to kind of turn it to a sound idea, whose perspective are we entering this world through? What does one reality sound like versus another reality? And I think of like one of the opening moments of the play where it says we hear chains in the background coming from the tower. Well, to somebody who's outside of a prison, chains sound restrictive and they sound like the reality that they are. But to somebody who's born in chains, does that reality have a different manifestation to them? Is that just the sound of the comfort they're used to? Is that, having your window slightly open or, whatever texture that would be, it doesn't sound as claustrophobic to them because it's the space they know.
I love this idea that we would experience the play from this like multiplicity of perspectives, right? That it isn't necessarily what we're experiencing isn't necessarily just the journey that Segismundo goes on throughout the play. I think what we're finding is that all of these different characters and their perspectives and their sense of reality and their sense of what the stakes are, or what the given circumstances are, really that we would kind of vacillate between all of those things, which I think continues to give us this sense of disjointed and also like understanding all of that all of these people are working from their own impulses and from their own sense of what reality is. Elisha, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of tag on to that from a lighting perspective, there's a great line really early in the play that is all about lighting. It's one of Rosara's lines. And she says, "Isn't that a lamp, that frail glimmer, that pale star, tremulous and faint? It throbs and it flickers like a pulse, making the darkness thicker." And I think that's sort of the essence of what a dream looks like to me, right? Like everybody's dream is, it's surrounded in darkness, right? And they are kind of the lamp, and they're looking to the other lamp. And so those ideas of my reality is the only reality. And so when one of the characters goes on one of their 4-paragraph monologues about this is my reality and this is how I feel about fate and justice and all of these things, it's their reality. But then the next character picks up and it's their reality. And so just kind of moving in a very ambiguous way from my reality to my reality to my reality. With lighting, that's so easy to do. And I think it's supple like a dream is.
Just listening to both of you just made me think about, do you guys remember the video the music video for Dead Leaves in the Dirty Ground by the White Stripes. Have you guys seen that video? Okay, so in the music video, Jack White is kind of coming home to his house, and his house is like trashed, just trashed. And he walks in, and you see projected on the space as he's walking through the space, you see projected kind of like memories or echoes of kind of what has happened in the past, right? So you're starting to see these other things, and you see the, the it just got me thinking about that video and how like we're seeing echoes, we're seeing other people's realities kind of projected into, the space, or projected into the thing, and people are kind of working, in that space. Yes, Elisha.
So, I mean, that's an actual literal idea that I had, right? The way that that projection, that moving image kind of takes on fog, right? Or on haze in an atmosphere. You can almost see an image, but you can't quite make out what it is. And I think that concept is so interesting for trying to see through the different layers of the dream that the different characters are talking about.
So I'm going to jump in here because this is a good time for us to take a break. It seems like everybody is really interested in this idea of the multiplicity of perspectives, of what that reality might mean, whether they're overlapping, whether they're, intersecting, whether they're colliding, whatever that may be. It seems that this is a common theme that we're landing on. I'm Josh Hsu. You're listening to Forge Theater Labs, and we'll be right back. Hey there, Josh Hsu here. If you've been enjoying our episodes and the stories we bring to life, there are a couple of easy ways that you can help us keep the fire burning. First, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. And if you want to take your support to the next level, you can buy us a coffee or even join our Patreon, helping us create more bold, design-forward, and innovative theater experiences. You'll find all the links on our website at forgetheaterlabs.com. Your support, whether it's a subscription, a donation, or just sharing the show with friends, makes a huge difference. Thanks for helping us forge ahead. At Forge Theater Labs, we want this podcast to be as collaborative as it was when we created it. That's where you come in. Have an idea for a future episode, a guest you'd love to hear from, or just thoughts on how we can make the show even better? Feel free to email us at info@forgetheaterlabs.com. Your voice shapes the stories we tell, so don't be shy. Let us know what you think. This is Josh Hsu from Forge Theater Labs, and welcome back. We're designing Life is a Dream this night with Liz Carlson, director, Elisha Griego, lighting designer, Sousa Wynn, scenic designer, and Sam Rapaport on sound. So I'll hand it back over to you, Liz.
Great. So I think we were just kind of getting into this excitement over like the ways in which we can play with moving perspective, with shifting perspective, with allowing an audience into these different characters' perspectives, and the ways in which there are kind of fun ways to create foggy dreams for us to experience. And so, yeah, I think that really is so beautifully in line with both the text and the spirit of the play. I think the opening of the play, when Razura comes out and she's like, "Oh, I'm a poor wretch alone," and then all of a sudden, this other guy shows up and he's like, I'm here too, right? Like this idea of like we're all in our own reality, just trying to figure it out. So now I think this phase is for us to kind of maybe speak and start to get into maybe, I don't know, some more specifics, or start to load our shopping carts up. I don't know. Yeah, so I think, and this idea of projection and moving image already feels like it's hot, and I think beautifully kind of captures this idea of of what a dream feels like or looks like. Other thoughts about the way in which this might come together, Elisha?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to me because, as a lighting designer, I have the wonderful ability to be utterly plastic, right? Everything I do can be totally moving. It can be very realistic in one moment and utterly surrealistic in another. And so I have so much opportunity here, I think, to take us in and out of those places. But my big question is to Chris, like, what is there a hard place here, or is it completely malleable?
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing that, I was just trying to think about too, is like, like how do you create, and I would love to make a space that is really also very malleable, right? Also very kind of plastic and elastic and moves and changes um, and how do we want the guests to experience this? How do we want the audience? I guess I'm using my, you know, terminology from my world, the world that I'm in now mostly. But, like, how do we want the audience to experience this, right? How do we want them to perceive it? And what's the framing? What's the lensing? And I think you said it, Liz, it's the framing of a dream, right? So the dream is the frame, and so, how do we bring that into a space? And that's kind of the interesting thing that I'm trying to think about is like, what kind of space allows us to do this? And I'm not certain. Sam.
Can I offer maybe a multi-dimensional terrarium?
Yeah. That would be pretty cool.
The idea that each of these characters within their own conflicts is in a prison of their own, sort of on display by the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the vantage point, you could see, and I'm thinking of like a reptile terrarium. So you can see like a certain rock fixture that, when rotated morphs into, a palace spire or something. And, one man's trash also kind of goes into that aesthetic.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. Like the at the beginning of the play, you have that terrarium, right? You have two people coming down out of a mountain, and then you have a prison. And how do you justify those two totally different spaces in the exact same scene? Though it is that terrarium, right? So we're picking somebody out of one scene, we're picking somebody out of another scene, and then you morph into like a palace court kind of thing, which is incredibly concrete and staid, but these people are still going through their epic monologues and they're still opining in their very internal kind of sensibilities. So
and through their drug-like state too,
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think, the idea of kind of like, each person having their own kind of reality or each person having their own space is interesting, and then how do we bring those spaces together to make different scenes or to, the guessing Guardians of the Galaxy, the collector, it's like those little, like the thing that, Howard the Duck is in, those little like pods, that's kind of what's popping into my mind right now. But, that doesn't feel quite right, but that's what's kind of like where my mind is going. We have ways to kind of, create or bring other people in through projection into those spaces, maybe even live feeds of people, so that we're kind of bringing them in, to each other's spaces through a live feed and through a projection of some sort. And so they're interacting maybe through the different projections, and maybe we're in a space where we're seeing all of these things and all these people, in existing in their own little worlds, but those worlds are kind of coming together through live projection or through, this, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a question I have for Liz in particular is how much genuine connection do you see between these characters? Because I think, so far we've been talking about everybody's perspective being their own and very isolated. But there's a father and a son. There's ostensibly a couple of romantic relationships. They're dysfunctional in my opinion, but they're there. So like, is there real connection or is it utterly disjointed?
I mean, my feeling in reading the play is that there are moments of real connection, and there are moments that feel like they kind of punch through the dream space, or that punch through that sense of like, oh, we're all floating in our own worlds and we'll never collide. The moments of, I think the Act 3 collision between Segismundo and Rosura has to feel tangible and real and connected. And I think these moments where like there are true, real consequences for collisions and connections and decisions. I mean, he never has a name, but like a second soldier, third soldier, fourth soldier gets thrown out the window, dead, right? Back in prison. I think the idea that this is just because we are forging our own realities doesn't mean that like connection is not possible, and does not mean that like life is without consequence, or that there aren't outcomes, there aren't actual outcomes to these things. So I feel like, yes, there are much of this is about like this dream space and these shifting perspectives. And then every so often, like something punches through that membrane, and it's very real, and it's very tangible, and it's very grounded. And all of a sudden these two perspectives land on the same planet in the same moment, and something happens. So yes, I think those moments exist, but the productions of this play in which like we are all in 17th century Spain, and if you read the introduction to the very antiquated text that we've all received,
I loved it.
This is a design. There are the scenes are just you go to the palace and then the prison, and and here's the scenic designer has solved it for you. See the sketch on page 47. I think that sense of it's a 3-act play. It has the beautiful classic structure of a 3-act play with no scenes inside of it. I think 41 there are 41 scenes, but they are not like, it's not act 1, scene 2. This isn't Shakespeare's scene breakdown, right? Like it's just we move, and then this happens, and then we are here. And I feel like there's something really lovely about that, the sense of that fluidity within the structure of the writing. That's really interesting to me. That we're moving to the palace, but like there wasn't really a scene break there. We just find ourselves there. You just, like when you're like, in my dream, I was at my dentist's office and I walked through the door and I was in my 2nd grade classroom. That it's that kind of logic. Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, I think of what the transitions would be, and reading it seems like, okay, the only time where there is any space for underscoring, unless it's explicitly said, is like in transition from one place to another. It feels kind of stale just for that alone. But within the permissions of needing a little bit of an usher from one reality to another, and sometimes a very stark transition. I mean, I'm hearing whoosh booms. I'm hearing like lost, eyes open. Okay, now I'm awake here. In other times, maybe it's like a more muted, overlapping crescendo. Think like A Day in the Life at the end of Sergeant Pepper's, like realities colliding and then one becoming overpowering over the other. And, very muddy in the background. And depending on the staging of this, really being surrounded by things and snapping out of a confusion state and then having silence or stillness or like just a single wind, depending on the mental clarity of the person who's leading the scene.
As a producer, I want to jump in here because I have a question for you all, which is, where is the audience in relationship to the performance? Are they walking through the performance? Are they seated? Are they, walking through the story? Are they guided through the story? Are they just roaming free within this space to experience different realities? Because that's a fun decision to land on that dictates how we present the story.
I think that's such a great question. And I don't know. I don't have an answer for it, except that the ways that I've pictured the audience, when I read the play and I think about where the audience is in relationship to the story, I feel like in the act 2, right? These are the moments that I see the audience. Act 2, Clarine becomes part of the audience, right? He comes in with his popcorn and he's like, well, I'm with y'all. This is too much. Let's see what happens. Like that sense that like, there are moments where the actor, maybe specifically him, possibly some other people, where the actors and the audience start to mesh and start to meld a little bit. And so the audience presence is real. It's not, they're not pure voyeur. What they're doing, I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from a practical standpoint, the way to make things really isolated and really magical with lighting is to be able to hide the lighting, hide the source, right? So that people come out of nowhere and they disappear into nowhere. So it could be very standard proscenium for that. But to your point, the audience isn't completely disconnected. We're not watching TV here, right? So I don't think it's a completely rare in the round thing either, right? I think we need to have places for things to come and go from. And what those places are, I have no idea. Are we in, to Chris's background, are we in an utterly immersive Meow Wolf thing where the light comes from inside the washing machine? Don't think there's a washing machine here, but are we in an utterly immersive space, or are we in something much more presentational? But lighting wise, I want somewhere to hide things. Yeah, Chris?
I mean, to me, I feel like it's more interesting and more exciting if we are in that kind of space that is more, gives more choice. The audience has more agency, right? Where they can kind of choose where they're focusing, what they're looking at. That to me seems more interesting. And I don't know if that's just because of my recent experiences, I've always been interested in that in a lot of ways, of giving the audience agency in the experience, making them an active participant in the experience, whether it's through being a voyeur, right? And that because there is power in that. There is power in that purposeful voyeuristic, gaze, right? And in a lot of normal theater experiences, that voyeuristic gaze is muted by the proscenium.
I think it could be all of the above, though, because we have an unlimited budget. So we could start from, a place of voyeurism to a place of participation. And so I defer to you, Liz. Like that is something like, what would be that sort of ideal experience? Like, what would speak to the messages you think that are in this play?
I mean, I think certainly this sense of fate versus free will, and this idea that I get to choose and I'm constructing my reality. I think that's really fun. And I think there are ways that we can sort of offer the audience choice and ways. I mean, I think, there are certainly, whether we want to think about a kind of a like choose your own adventure style of experiencing, certainly at least the beginning of the play, as the storylines start in this kind of disparate space, or whether it's just, everybody gets a office rolly chair and you can swivel around and see this part, or you can see that part, or you can zoom yourself over there. Just like the idea that there is the way that your relationship to what is happening and what is being presented, that there is a way for you to like choose how you position yourself in relationship to this story, or there is a way for you to be in, out, back and forth. Like there are ways for you to have some, so that it doesn't feel like this kind of like theatrical, like I'm in my seat, proscenium, curtain up, experience the story, but it feels like I'm in, like, right, this is the nightmare, right? I've shown up to this play and like, am I in it? Am I not in it? Should I be in it? Do I have line? But like that feeling of like, there's a little unease in there, and that's not the most hospitable experience I've ever designed for an audience, but that feeling of like, it's not separate from me. I can choose my relationship to it. It's not manipulative. It's not abusive, but I can choose how I'm in relationship to it. But that kind of lingering unease of like, I'm kind of in the middle of this thing. I'm not on the outskirts of it. So like, rather than being, and I don't know that this is any more specific, but rather than being at this sort of like safe distance from what's happening, or this like really clear divide of here's the play and here is you, that membrane would be a little fuzzy, and that there might be shifts that are asked of the audience, where there may be opportunity to be closer, or that things would happen around you, or that you would become part of the landscape in some way. That I feel like that feeling, because I think that feeling that we want to make of this play, which is like, is it real? Am I dreaming? Are you dreaming? Who is dreaming? Who is experiencing objective reality here? Maybe it's not me. That I feel like we can build for an audience from like that full experience for an audience member of like, here I am. I'm not necessarily in a I'm not fully removed from what's happening. I'm a little bit part of it. Yeah, Elisha.
So I guess I was thinking about the fact that we don't have a costume designer here, right? And placing this play. So are we saying we're placing it in an utterly abstract place? Are we placing it? The language is really formal, right? There's antiquated formal language here. So is there some sort of nod to it being a Spanish, somewhat religious kind of thing? Is there any acknowledgement of that? Are we going into the future? Are we going into nowhere? Like I'm struggling with, I can put it anywhere, right? Blue is blue, whether we're being realistic or utterly unrealistic. A downlight is a downlight. But I don't know what kind of world we're trying to build in this partially interactive, choose your own fate kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think there are, and it's a question I want to ask our costume designer. But it becomes like whether or not, I feel like to acknowledge the core and the source of the play is important, right? It's part of what's informing the given circumstances of the play. It's part of what is informing actions that are happening. It's part of the world, but it also is existing. It exists in the span of time between that and now, and this idea that like we are able to like jump in time and style and place in this dream world, so that it doesn't all have to live in Spain in the 1630s, and it does not all have to live in 2025. That there are different, like we drop in, not in a like it's everything, but in a like it's in this moment it's this specific time and place, in this moment it's this specific time and place, and I'm not going to question whether and maybe this character is showing up in a doublet in Act 1 and in a pantsuit in Act 2, right? Like those things become a little bit, not that we're allowed to jump around as it suits and serves. Maybe. What do you think, Chris?
It's that dream. It's that dream logic that we're kind of talking about, right? It's that dream space where there is no questioning it. It is just what it is. It is, one moment we're there and another moment we're here, and we leap and we jump and we move and we change. And, at one moment the costume is doublets and, whatever. And maybe there's just one person in that and the other person's in a 3-piece suit. And, but those things are coming together because it is a dream, because it is, that kind of space. And, one guy has, there's the sword that's really important to Rosaria's story. So, there's a sword, but maybe in another scene, there's, an M16 or an AK-47, for the revolt.
I love the openness of what we're talking about, and I love the kind of absurdity of the juxtaposition of the different elements. But Bossy Pants producer me says, this is great. We have 43 minutes left. We have to make some choices to actually design a show. So my fanciful dreamers, like that's what I want next, right? Like we got 42 and a half minutes left. So how do we turn these grand dreamscapes into something that an audience can experience? Done being bossy.
Okay, where do you want to start? Do we want to start by thinking about like space more specifically? Do we want to start by thinking about like what are the in our dream world, in this dream world, like what are the specifications, or what do we want from space? Like what is it? What are we walking into, and what are the things? What are the tangible or intangible things that exist here? Like if I'm an audience member walking, I bought my ticket, I'm showing up, I'm walking into an abandoned mall. I'm walking into, like where does this want to live? I'm walking into a life-size terrarium. I'm walking into talk to me, Sam.
Yeah, to that effect, perhaps it's the game Simon comes to mind, or wherever there's already factions for archetypes within the show, and you can choose to sit in your, in the king's room. You can choose to sit in the in Rosara's area, coming from away. A musical chairs idea. There's 4 corners or something like that.
That's fun. Yeah. So we come into this sort of space. You got to choose your fighter. You got to come in and you're like, I don't even know what this is, but I got to choose my side. That's super fun.
It's like medieval times. I don't know if you guys know medieval times here in Southern California, right? So I'm team blue jouster or whatever. Yeah, that's fun. Practically, I spoke about it a little bit earlier. I want places to hide things, right? I want nooks and crannies. I want places where the audience isn't. I want negative space. And of course, since we have no budget, I have all the power I need in whatever abandoned mall medieval times we've got here. And I think the ability to put haze on everything would be fantastic, so we can really come and go through layers.
I mean, I kind of love the idea of like the abandoned mall, like those those liminal spaces, right? The spaces that are in between, because they're so full of possibilities. You know, yeah,
And that's where your dreams happen, right? Like that's
right.
where those are the settings of
Liminal
your
spaces
dreams.
are dream spaces. They're and so an abandoned mall, an abandoned warehouse, um, an office building that's empty.
We got those in Maine in spades.
Oh yeah, we had a beautiful abandoned mall.
Yeah, I mean the mall feels better, but I don't know why. I don't know why a mall feels better than an office space, but it does.
It has more life. It has more. It's a ghost, right? There's real
Yeah,
ghost in abandoned mall. There's memory and there's ghost, and all of
yeah,
those things feel sort of important.
right.
Yeah, yeah. And there's all this like, and there's this multiplicity built into a mall. It's not a one purpose space. It's like all of these things and it's
Mm-hmm.
all of these collisions. Yeah. And you walk, and I think like a space that you're going to walk into, I'm not going into a space where I expect a play, this play, right? Like I'm walking into, and then something really incongruous is about to happen in this space. There's lots of spaces to hide in a mall. Yeah, let's pick it. Let's find it. Let's find ourselves an abandoned mall.
They're everywhere.
I've been toying with runway AI as we've been talking, and so I just threw into the Google slide an image, and
Oh my God.
but I don't. It doesn't feel quite right yet, but we're getting there. So it's just the feeling of that space. The feeling of a space that is worn down, aged, has history, has like you said, kind of ghosts, memories, um, kind of built into it. Abandoned factories, abandoned malls, things like that feel better than say like an office building or something. What we're discussing doesn't feel quite right for a proscenium stage, like a typical proscenium stage, um, to me. I mean, you could, but then why not use the abandoned mall down the street? Because instead of recreating it on stage. So yeah, there's some interesting things there, interesting feelings, in spaces like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're invited into and being invited into a space that already like is
Mm-hmm.
conjuring feeling in you, right? You're already like putting your own reality into like, I'm gonna walk into that and I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, that curious,
Mm-hmm.
nostalgic, emotional, right? That's psychic space for me. And for everybody, as opposed to walking into a space that is fully anonymous, or designed to be anonymous, soulless, right? This is designed to be a space of vibrancy, and now it
And now it's
is
become soulless.
not anymore.
I mean, the other thing that could be interesting too is
Yeah.
like an old Victorian style mansion or something that where you have different rooms or things that you could go into, and because again, those spaces have history, they have time, they have memory kind of in there, and we have our own kind of, like you're saying, preconceived notions of what this space is, and kind of coming into those spaces, and there's feelings there already.
Yeah.
Jumping in as a producer here, have you all been to in Los Angeles, since you're
Mm-hmm.
like in the area, Delusion? Because that is literally hosted inside a Victorian house. Like it's on the Culver City. They used to have this sort of perfect Victorian house where they would basically take you through different rooms of a horror themed show, and it would guide you through the story. It was all very much well choreographed. The audience was forced to stay, didn't have freedom
Yeah.
of movement, but that is a sort of interesting sort of play.
Yeah, former goth kid here. I want to make sure we don't end up in Halloween Horror Nights, though. I mean, I think
No.
there's so much room for a dream to turn into a nightmare, and while there are dark pieces to this story for sure, I think there's the morality part of it too, right? Like there's kind of a nod to faith and a higher power and things like that. So as much as I want to be former goth kid, I think we have to balance the spooky with the
Yeah,
the
it does not want
higher.
to become a horror story, right? I mean, it doesn't want to. There, like you said, there are moments where horrific things happen, right? But it is not that. Is an overall, like, there is a story of redemption in a lot of ways in the end. So
Yeah, it's unsettling. It's not scary. It's slightly
no,
unsettling.
yeah, and that's where I think some more of these other liminal spaces make more sense. They're unsettling. That abandoned mall is unsettling. An abandoned mall is an unsettling space. Um, uh, I'm trying to think of other liminal spaces that
I mean, old
yeah.
theaters are fantastic,
Old
right?
theaters.
They're romantic,
Yeah.
they're spooky, they're memories. I love old theaters.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that's speaking to me about mall right now is that a mall is a commons, right? I dig into this play a little bit more from like a modern point of view. I'm like, I have questions about wealth. I have questions about power. I have questions about like who gets to decide things and why. Who gets to be in charge of someone else's fate? And so this idea of like a mall is a place where a variety of social classes intersect, and a mall is a place of like just unbridled capitalism. A mall is a place, right? Like, and like that idea of like there's something about money, and there's something about this idea that like the king shares space with the clown, right? These ideas that like you are brought high and brought low. Like the amount of people who are brought high and brought low in this play, like this idea of kind of moving through. So this like these spaces that have a sense of class structure. I don't know. There's just something about it that feels good and right to me. That like, yeah, it's a meeting place. It's not a place that like I have an association with because I belong to the socioeconomic class. We all we all found ourselves at the mall in the 90s. We all found ourselves in a mall. Not so much anymore. But yeah, this idea that like it's a commons. There's a sense in which it exists as a space that everyone has access to. There's something about that feels important to me.
Kind of on that note, you talking about this common space where everybody ends up, and it's sort of neutral. I keep coming back to the idea of a courthouse and the idea of judgment as well, and I think the two spaces could intersect potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But that idea, like maybe sometimes the audience is looking down and they're judging, and sometimes they are involved and they're being judged, right? Like putting them on different levels.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think like and inviting that shifting perspective, right? That we're getting to see this from different vantage points, and depending on whether you're watching from above or you're in the fray, Act 3 is very different. Act 3 is different if you're in the middle of the battle or you're watching from above, right? Those like this idea that there's an invitation to experience it in a variety of ways, and that kind of impacts how you walk out of it and what you think. What do you think this play was about? It really depends on like where were you sitting. Yeah, Sam.
Speaking to the levels of things, and as the play moves forward, thinking of the depth and sort of the y-axis, and the literal levels of the mall. I think starting off with like pure, tinny intercom ambience of like, okay, here's the reality that we're aware of, and as we get deeper into the show, the sound sources descend and get a little bit closer to us, mid range, and then by the time everything hits the fan, we're in battle and all that, then it's our level. It's it's right around us, and it sounds a lot more palpable and less ethereal and in the background.
So we're at an hour right now, and so I thought we might take a short little break here, just to review and recap what we sort of driven towards. Was we need spaces with nooks and crannies, and we need spaces that allow the audience to view it from a multiple perspectives. And so we're kind of headed towards this idea of a mall and creating spaces in a mall. Questions that I would have at this point would be, are the scenes happening simultaneously? Are the scenes happening in linear order? Because we talk about spaces creating, a mall allows us to present multiple events at the same time, or, in a linear order. And I think that would be sort of where I hope we might end up in the next remainder of that conversation. You've been listening to Forge Theater Labs. We are designing or busting in 90 minutes with Life is a Dream. We'll be right back. Want to get your brand in front of a passionate, creative, and engaged audience? Forge Theater Labs is looking for partners to sponsor this podcast and join us in bringing bold, innovative theater to life. If you'd like to place an ad right here, reach out to us at marketing@forgetheaterlabs.com. It's a simple, powerful way to support the arts while sharing your message with listeners who care about creativity and community. Again, that's marketing@forgetheaterlabs.com. Let's build something extraordinary together. Welcome back to Forge Theater Labs. I'm your host, Josh Shu, and today we are designing Life or Bust. We are in those final stages. We are wrapping it up, and hopefully we'll make it. We'll have some kind of show, and so we've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Liz. Take it away.
Great. So I think are we kind of left in that space? I think, Josh, you left us with the question of like, what is the story linear? Is it non-linear? How do we want the narrative to be experienced? Do we feel like it is this kind of important that is this chronological narrative, or do we feel like an audience can kind of bounce in and out or move with it or see things in a variety of orders? I think one of the things that I felt in reading the play was like, oh, I know, and I know none of you have worked with me before. I'm a sucker for a prologue, and I was like, oh, this desperately wants a prologue, in which we get all of that. There's so much backstory that we get eventually as we journey through the play, and I feel like at least I want to experience the prophecy in prologue form somehow, so that like it isn't just this here comes our girl, and starts to play. But yeah, my feeling, I have a sense that like there may be slips in time. There's the possibility of kind of slipping in and out of time, but also the core of the story is one of there is this kind of linear through of transformation that feels important to me, but that there also is so much past between these people, and so much, and that we might experience other moments in other ways or in other sequences. I don't know. Thoughts?
Linear feels pretty secure. I do like the idea of a prologue. Perhaps playing to the mall, depending on the entrance you're on, there's like little kiosk or windows to look in and that make up the textures of the reality, kind of give you that pre-show vibe.
Oh yeah. We get little glimpses into some of these worlds and some of these stories. Yeah, and that you get what you get, and maybe you're not, maybe you're getting some, maybe you're getting, so you're carrying a certain story or a certain perspective, whatever you happen to receive, into the experience. That's really fun.
I like the idea of having kind of some sort of prologue to kind of like help frame it, right? Something that is a common experience, as you're kind of, starting as a frame of reference, as a way to like, set expectations, kind of prime the audience into the way that we want, because you can kind of influence them to some degree as far as how we want them to perceive things. And so I think, that prologue could do that, right? That prologue, that common experience of a prologue that is, that could do that. I think there's something really interesting and kind of powerful of like letting people kind of choose, but also having moments where we take that choice away and it comes together, and the actors come together for key pivotal moments, right? That you were talking about, Sigmundo and Rosaria kind of coming together, and those moments are reality. Those moments are very clearly real, and they shape his reality and his world and how he's perceiving things, and shape the decisions that he makes at the end of the play. And so I think there's moments that we need to kind of come together, but also moments where we allow more freedom, more choice, more non-linear storytelling. I think that could be really interesting, having a balance of those things. Josh, you mentioned kind of that very linear story that you're led through the house, and and then there's also like Sleep No More, that all of us are kind of aware of, which is very non-linear. But I think there's something interesting kind of finding the balance between the two, right? Allowing choice at times, but also making sure that people are coming together for certain key aspects and key moments.
I'm just going to throw this out there. Since we do have these subplots,
right,
that might be a place where we have 3 separate plots. Instead of making them subplots, you could follow the future king, right? The once and future king. You could follow Rosara on her quest for vengeance. You could follow the jilted lovers that want to just be king and have a secure future. Like, there are different pathways to that story, Liz. So like, that then you have your come together moments and you have your separate moments.
And then there's also something really, fascinating and interesting, because like now we're having to fill in, right? Now we're having to fill in moments that are not in the play. Now we're having to it's like watching Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, right? You're seeing the moments that are not when they're not on stage. And so that could be interesting. Like, what's happening to Rosaria in times where other things are happening to Sigmundo, and where when she's not the main focus, and then these things come together, like we're talking about, for key moments. You follow that actor, you follow those moments, and you have the choice to follow them. And then when they leave, maybe there's something else that's happening to them elsewhere, and that could be an interesting kind of thing. It's a lot. I mean, it's a big thing, right?
We have unlimited time and resources.
We have an unlimited time and resources, so we can hire tons and tons of writers to write all the subplots and all the stories, and
Well, and it's fantastic because we're just going to get endless people coming in to see the different iterations of the story, right? So it's a constant revenue stream, which every theater needs.
And return visits.
Exactly.
Because now you saw that one story, now you want to see the other story, now you want to see the other story.
But I mean, I think that's something really compelling about the space that we've put together here is you can be downstairs in the mall and looking up at Hot Topic, and you can be downstairs at the mall looking down to Sears, that probably Sears doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, the space allows you to direct your gaze and I think experience different overlapping realities.
Which is interesting. And from a producer's point of view, like, hey, you're just bringing in, more and more people, more and more money, because they want to come back and see the thing again. They want to see the experience and experience different stories and different things. So, yeah.
And it's a free dinner theater. I mean, if we're at a mall, there's got to be a food court.
You got to go to the food court.
Hot dog on a stick. You got to have hot dog on a
There's
stick.
a panda garden. Yeah.
I think we're reaching our time. You all are amazing. Thank you so much for coming up with this idea. So if you have lots of money out there, we have a show for you. It's called Life is a Dream. It's in a mall. It's maybe in different time periods. It's got creepy spaces but fun spaces that open up, different sounds that transform, and places to come together. The insurance will be astronomical, but we promise you'll get repeat return experiences. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm Josh Shu. This is Forge Theater Labs, and you've been listening to our Design or Bust episode of Life is a Dream. Take care.
Forge Theater Labs is produced by Josh Shu, audio production by Sam Rapaport, intro drum beat by Dave Register, incidental music by Super Order, and closing music by Corey Melanson.